Being anti-feminist is surprisingly more common than you might think, and there are a lot of influencers on TikTok who have massive followings built off being anti-feminist. For today's video, we're going to be discussing a specific content creator called Savannah Stone. Now, Savannah Stone identifies as not only an anti-feminist, but she also is a right-wing leaning political figure, and she makes content not only on things that are anti-feminist, but also just generally her views on marriage, her views on how she thinks women should act, and also her political beliefs. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Eviebunnie. For today's video, I am so excited to talk to you guys about this topic because I have been making so many short form content reels on this that I just feel like it's only natural that I would make a YouTube video. As just a side note for today's video, it is so unbelievably hot in Japan today. It is almost 40 degrees, so I am not going to be wearing contact lenses, which is why I look a little bit different. Now, Savannah Stone, in fact, actually has some pretty controversial beliefs. She believes that consent does not exist in marriage, and she talks about this quite a lot. Some of her other beliefs is that she believes that there should be a voting system where only one person in the household votes, a family voting system where the male head of the household would vote. I feel like the majority of her content focuses on guiding young women who she thinks should be getting married, being less political, and essentially trying to guide women who want to be tradwives into what she believes is best for women's futures. Now, obviously, if you know me, if you know my channel, you'll know why I disagree with this. But for anyone new here, let's break down all of the different beliefs she has from her videos and talk about why I believe this is a really dangerous message to send to young girls and ultimately is doing more harm than good. We're going to take a look at some of her most viral TikToks, and I'm going to offer my thoughts and opinions on them as well as reacting to them. So let's start with the first one. We've got one of her debates to react to.
I think the feminist movement supports women at all. I think it actually harms them. It's told us that exploitation is empowering and that we should offspring.
So already we have a bunch of things to discuss just from the get-go. I don't think that the feminist movement is saying that every single form of kind of exploitation is powerful. I don't think that any true feminist will sit next to you and look you in the eyes and say, I believe that women being assaulted is powerful. I don't think anyone would think that. What I would say is that the feminist movement has tried to make it safer for women who are SW. If you know what that means, again, I have to censor myself, but for women who work in the adult industry, the feminist movement has tried to make it safer because historically this has always been a really dangerous industry for women. Do I believe in an ideal world women should have to do this? Not necessarily, and it's important to acknowledge that obviously this industry does prey on women. It's more about making it safer for women because there are a lot of women who, it's not as simple as, oh, you just shouldn't do this. A lot of women don't really have a choice, which is horrible. A lot of it is about trying to make it safer for those women, which unfortunately is sometimes the only thing that we can do. I personally am not for exploitation in any kind. I don't agree with it. What I would say is that I just want people to be safe and I want women to have options. I want women to feel like they don't have to do this. That is what I want from society. And I think that this is a huge generalization on what feminists believe. Most feminists do not believe this. So the next point that she's saying is killing unborn children, which is obviously a reference to abortion. Again, I'm obviously pro-abortion because I'm pro having a choice for your body. Now, it's up to you. If you personally believe for your own body that it would be killing a child, honestly, that's fine. If you believe that for yourself and that's why you wouldn't do it, I'm not going to judge you for that. That's absolutely fine. It's your body. If you believe that's how you see it in a spiritual sense. But for me personally, I just don't see it that way. I think that it's a lot more complicated than that, especially when you consider the fact that abortion can also include people who are children themselves, who have been victims of SA. A lot more reasons to it than just, oh, I think women should just use it willy-nilly. Most people who get an abortion are not just doing it for fun. It's quite a serious decision. And so, you know, I'm not like going out here acting like it's a funny thing. This is a really big medical decision that people have to make. And it's not easy for a lot of people. I know a lot of people who've had to have abortions and have found it very mentally draining and a very uncomfortable experience. But you have to understand that not everyone has the privilege of having resources to become a mother, of having the money, of having the time, of being able to look after a child. And considering how the foster system in America is so underfunded and foster kids are just treated awfully and there's not enough foster mothers, I have to ask, are you putting the same effort and the same time into advocating for children who are failed by the foster system as you are for advocating against abortion? Because if you are being anti-abortion, that means that I would like to see you put the same amount of time and energy into supporting foster kids, because a lot of people aren't fit to be mothers.
Inconvenience to our life, and that marriage and family are not important anymore.
I mean, I don't really think so, because I think as a woman, there's so much more to us than being a wife or being, you know, a mother. And from like the perspective of someone who is queer, it's so interesting how a lot of these traditional, like Christian, like straight women, they really just view everything about being in a relationship with a guy. And I'm like, listen, as someone who is queer and, you know, who views relationships as more than just like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, have kids and be like a Christian wife and bake bread or whatever it is that she's doing in her spare time. There's so much more to a relationship than that, and I just think it's a very sad way to sort of pigeonhole yourself into something. And you know, if she's truly happy, I'm not going to judge her at all. Like, I think that's fine if, you know, if you aren't hurting anyone, which I guess she is with her beliefs. But anyway, I don't know. I wouldn't judge you for how you live your life. You know, again, if that makes you happy, you do you. But can we not try and get young women to follow the footsteps of, oh, I think that you should not get an education just because you should get married or whatever have you. Feminism really has benefited us. If it weren't for feminism, you wouldn't be able to vote, which I'm sure she does vote. You wouldn't be able to drive, which I'm sure she does drive. You wouldn't be able to have your own bank account, which I'm sure she has her own bank account. You wouldn't be able to, I don't know, go to the store and buy makeup without having a chaperone. You wouldn't be able to, I don't know, have your own business. You wouldn't be able to legally have help if your husband was to assault you. But again, she then goes on to say, oh, she doesn't really care about that. So there's a lot of things that make it very hypocritical with this person. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm really trying to be horrible to her, because I'm not. Like, I don't like to hate on people in a mean way, but I do think it's very hypocritical for her to use the benefits and reap the rewards of feminism, like being able to be a political speaker, have her own social media, have her own car, vote. These are all things that feminism, the suffragettes fought, and some of them even died for you to have. These are all privileges that women historically have fought for you to have. And then you are now turning around and using those privileges to talk against them. And again, that's why I find it so unbelievably hypocritical, is that she is complaining about feminism, and yet she wouldn't be able to do anything in her life if it weren't for feminism. Another thing that I want to say is that one of the other reasons I find this type of content creator so dangerous is because people might say, oh, well, you know, she's living that type of lifestyle and it's working for her. She's not. She has a job. If you don't know, content creation, social media is a very legitimate job. Like, it pays well. I would not be surprised if she is earning much more than her husband right now, if not being the sole breadwinner of the family. So for someone who is so insistent on having stereotypical gender roles, it's very, very interesting that she is basically the breadwinner, the one earning money in her household, and she's earning good money from social media, I would assume, because, you know, I'm watching the views that she gets on her multiple platforms. She's getting hundreds of thousands of views, of likes. She's definitely got that revenue going. So yeah, I would say that it's very interesting how a lot of these Tradwife influencers, these Tradwife right-wing American influencers, they are all minted from social media. Like, they portray one thing that they want their followers to do. They're like, you guys should all go get married and not get a job and not get an education. But they are benefiting from having a job, from having somewhat of an education by talking about this stuff. Like, it is unbelievably hypocritical, but also quite funny, because it's like, well, why don't you practice what you preach? Already getting overheated, guys. I don't know if it's because I'm talking so much, but anyway, let's watch the next video.
You could be at home with kids right now. if you wanted to.
Again,
right?
I don't have kids.
Savannah Stone talks a lot about having kids, preserving the kind of traditional American household, whatever that means. And one of the points that she says is she's like, oh, I think women should, focus on having a family. And the irony is, like, again, not that I'm saying she can't do this, but it is very hypocritical, right? She doesn't have any kids of her own. So she's practicing a very different thing from what she's preaching. In this debate that she has, the lady who is feminist very rightly says, oh, so you're working, like you're doing what you want to do. Yes, she is. She absolutely is focusing on her career. And, in a feminist kind of space, we would say there's nothing wrong with that. The point of feminism is being able to say, hey, if you want to focus on having kids, you can do that. If you want to focus on having a career, you can do that. If you want to focus on studying, you can do that. It's about having the choice. It's about being able to say, women don't have to be pigeonholed into one specific box. You can do whatever you want. And that's the problem that I have with the kind of like American obsession with this like nuclear family, is that if that works for you, great. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with that personally. I think that's lovely. I think if you find someone you love and you have kids, that's really sweet, right? I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is trying to make everyone else do the same thing as you. Some of us might be gay. Some of us, I don't know, might just not want to marry anyone. Some people are ace. Some people don't want kids. Some people are, I don't know, polyamorous. Like there's different types of people, and not everyone wants this like very cookie cutter mold of what you're trying to sell. Like not everyone wants that. Like, I don't know, for me personally, I don't know if I would even want kids in the future, but the fact that I have the liberty to say, oh, I don't know actually if I would want kids is such a privilege, because, if this was like 100, 200 years ago, I might not have that privilege, right? And that's what makes feminism so powerful, is that we can choose to study or to focus on our career, which is what she's doing. We can choose to do that. Like Savannah Stone's life is a lot more similar to a working businesswoman than it is to a tradwife that she's trying to claim she is. And I will die on that hill. She absolutely is a businesswoman. She's a businesswoman and she's making bank off of promoting this tradwife lifestyle. And, the people who eat it up and say, oh, well, I want to get a husband and cook and clean. I'm like, okay, but are you doing that because she's doing that? Because I don't see her having kids and staying quiet and not having political opinions. I think it's the complete opposite. And it's very, very interesting how she has such a different life from what she claims to promote. And another point that she makes is she says that it's really disrespectful for someone to keep bringing up the fact she doesn't have kids, which in any other circumstance, I would agree with that. I would say, yeah, like it's not really anyone's business if you have kids or not. The only reason why I wouldn't say it for this specific circumstance is because you are promoting a tradwife lifestyle where you are saying absolutely women should focus on having kids over a career to your very young and impressionable female audience. So I would say, yeah, absolutely. It is a point of criticism that you yourself do not live this lifestyle. And I think it's really clever that she uses the kind of feminist point of, oh, you shouldn't question me. Like that's so anti-feminist, because she's trying to turn it on its head and say, oh, well, you're the weird one for saying that. But actually it's because it goes against her core beliefs. That's why it is so hypocritical. And, if she hasn't had kids because she's infertile, again, why doesn't she adopt? Because I don't know why these like trad wife Christian Americans, for the fact that they always consider themselves so righteous and so amazing, why don't they adopt kids? Like there are so many kids who really need parents who, if, like I said, are failed by the system. Why don't you adopt kids if you are infertile or whatever it is? I think it would be an amazing thing.
Because you're focusing on your career.
And
it's not the right timing.
No, I said it's a completely.
It's just like going in circles, really. Like she doesn't really have a legitimate reason for not having kids, despite claiming that it is the most important thing.
Because when you say I do, you are committing to a lifetime of sex. And obviously I'm not talking.
This is probably the belief that I find the most awful out of everything that Savannah says, which is that she does not believe consent exists in marriage. And she says here in this interview or podcast or whatever this is, she says that she believes when you get married, you are signing up to quote unquote a lifetime of, which I think is a very misogynistic way to think, because again, I want to go back to one of my original points, which is that first of all, I don't think that intimacy in that type of sense of the word is everything to a marriage. I think there are so many more things that make you compatible with someone. I think that that's a very warped way to view love and to view marriage. I think there are so many other reasons you might marry someone. You know, you might really love other forms of intimacy. And again, I want to point out, not everyone is so typical in how they experience attraction or what they want in their marriage. Maybe it's just not all the time. And this, I hate to say it, but this is definitely part of culture. This really is. And I don't want to, you know, accuse her of being a defender of that, but I kind of think that this statement is, because you are saying that in marriage it doesn't exist. What about all of the women who historically have been in marriage? I think it's a really dangerous statement to make, because you are demeaning those people who have been assaulted in their marriages. You are acting like it doesn't matter or that it's normal. I don't know. It's a very dangerous statement to make.
About abusive marriages or violent marriages, but I am.
Okay, so here she kind of tries to defend herself by saying, obviously, I don't mean violent marriages. But again, that statement, I don't know, what do you define as violent? What about, I don't know, holding hands? Am I too old-fashioned? I don't know. This just, ironically, this feels like a very modern view.
Saying that sex is the oxygen of your marriage women have towards men. This
is definitely like a very heterosexual way to view it. Like, you know, oh, the girl doesn't want to do it, the guy does, ha ha ha. Like, again, that is so stereotypical. I don't think that you can say every single marriage is going to be like that. Maybe that's her experience, maybe that's her parents' experience, and that's why she's saying this. But I just feel like it's very, it's just a huge generalization, and I don't really think that everyone feels this way about marriage. I don't know. I think that's very creepy to assume that it's like the woman doesn't want to do it and the guy does, and like, oh my gosh, that's how every marriage works. No. Not every single marriage would be like that, I don't think. I don't know, to act like women kind of withhold it as if it's like something that men are owed. Even if you're with someone, even if you're married to someone, you don't owe them that. Okay, so here we have her take on female, which I don't know if I have to censor this word, but to be safe, I'm going to censor this word.
Female love is romanticized, but male love is demonized.
That is absolutely not true. Historically, female lust has absolutely been treated as much more disgusting and demonized way more than male lust. I mean, you only have to look at stories like Read the Yellow Wallpaper, anything about women who do not do what their husband wants. In fact, if you look at how women were treated, a lot of cases of hysteria were put down to women being overly, and that was seen as something that was deeply wrong with them. You can look at history books. I don't know if she ever does that in her spare time. It doesn't sound like it. If you read any history book, you will see that women were seen as hysterical if they had too much love. It was seen as hysterical. It was seen as not a good idea. It was seen as something that was not ideal. And nowadays, women are still shamed for being lovable or for being, you know, sexual beings. And the only time that male love demonized is when we're specifically discussing predators. So I don't know why you're defending that, because it just sounds like you're kind of excusing male predators. And I want to remind you again that the industry is completely based off of male love. There is a multi-billion-dollar industry based off of male love. And for women, when you look at someone like Bonnie Blue, for example, she has been probably treated worse than any male offender, even though what she's doing I don't agree with. Some of the male stars have probably slept with way more people than her. You look at male celebrities who are stars, such as Johnny Sins, do you see him getting any backlash, even to a minuscule amount, to the level that Bonnie Blue gets, despite the fact he's probably done a very similar thing to what she does? No. So I completely disagree. I mean, the fact that people like Bonnie Blue are even getting so much publicity because of what they're doing is because they're women. If it was a guy, people would be saying, oh, lucky him, he gets to be with all these girls. But because Bonnie Blue is a woman, that's why it's so shocking to us.
So women can openly over a male celebrity on social media with no...
I would say it's kind of equal when it comes to people like over celebrities. Like, I see equal parts men and women being a little crazy and feral, and also non-binary people too, because let's be real, it's not just men and women. There's always going to be people going feral over celebrities. I've seen all different types of people on social media doing that. It's really not just women. Yeah, I mean, sure, men are kind of a bit more gross about it a lot of the time because a lot of men's crushes are a bit too young for them, from what I've seen. So that's one thing. You know, something that I found really creepy personally, which was specifically a man thing, was men who were saying really inappropriate things about the athletes in the Olympics. And again, I think a lot of it is because there's a time and place for it. Like, if you have a crush on someone and, you know, you just make a cute post, you're like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. That's like one thing. But what they were saying about people like Alyssa Liu, who again is very young, I think she's only 20 years old, the way that men were talking about her made me really uncomfortable because most of them are old enough to be her dad, but it's also the fact that like they were talking about her like really objectifying her in a certain way. So yeah, that's kind of the thing that most feminists have a problem with whenever we're talking about men being lost. It's just the way that they go about it is so creepy sometimes.
Women don't need to be more educated on politics or what Trump.
In an interesting turn of events, she also claims that women don't have to have opinions on everything, despite the fact that her job and her income comes from having an opinion on things, a political opinion at that.
Or what Trump is doing or what so-and-so in Congress is doing. Women should just be focused on being whimsical. Like, you really need to be whimsy maxing. You need to be jumping in lakes and swimming. You need to be frolicking in.
I think that being educated on politics is one of the most powerful tools that you can have in this world right now, especially considering the fact that everything is political. What we eat is political. You know my beliefs because I don't eat meat or I don't consume animal products. So I believe that what you eat is political because, again, a lot of people don't have access to nice quality food. If a lot of people, again, with clothing is political because, again, a lot of people don't have access to certain types of clothes. There are so many different things that are political. Every single part of our lives is influenced by politics. I mean, especially in America, because, oh my gosh, you look at the fact that, you know, there are places in America that have dirty water because of the data centers. Like, that was insane to hear about. You know, there are people who, you know, for example, Black people in America are being because they're Black, literally no other reason, which is so demented and horrible. And you can't tell me that that isn't political because, again, it is because of these hideous right-wing people who are trying to harm minorities. Everything is political. And, you know, again, as like a white woman, I'd say sometimes we have a place of privilege where we don't feel we need to talk about politics because it doesn't affect us as much. Absolutely, it does affect every person, even if you are privileged, even if you're white, whatever, it still affects you. You know, the fact that there are places in America, like I said, where you can't get an abortion, that affects you. And even if it doesn't affect you, I feel like it shows a very low sense of empathy and understanding to think that just because something, you know, isn't about you, that to me is very low empathy. And yeah, I don't agree with that. If you are well educated, it really does benefit your life. You know, it helps you to make better decisions in your life, to try and help more people, to just be a better person. I think that being political, being well spoken, being educated on current topics is super important. And I've always believed this, you know, ever since I was a child, because that's kind of the belief that my parents instilled in me. And I would hope that you guys feel the same way, right? I just think it's super important. So why does it benefit her by saying that women shouldn't be political? Well, you can kind of guess why she thinks that, right?
Swimming, you need to be frolicking in fields. You need to be baking sourdough.
Being whimsical. I can't believe she can say this with a straight face because, you know, as someone who is probably quite a whimsical person, I mean, look at my room. I kind of live in a little fairy room myself. I'm very, very whimsical. I disagree with that. I don't think that you should always focus on being whimsical. I actually disagree completely. You know, as someone who literally makes Sylvanian custom houses in their spare time, you know, I'm probably one of the most whimsical people, but I still think you shouldn't be focused on that all the time. Yes, sometimes it's nice to have a break from, you know, the darkness of the world. And I think it's important to have, you know, creative outlets and do things with your time and just, you know, fun hobbies. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, we all need to have a sense of understanding of what is going on in this world. And yes, that is more important than having whimsy. And this is one of the reasons why I hate the just a girl trend. Guys, come on, let's just do better. This is really, really sad because you guys are just dumbing yourself down basically for men. So anyway, jumping in lakes and swimming, frolicking. I can insert a clip of me doing that exact thing. I am your poster child for doing these things. Look at my Instagram. Whenever I'm not filming, right? I'm always frolicking. I'm in fields and forests with my friends. I do photography. I love to do fantasy photo shoots with my friends and cosplay photo shoots, which, by the way, I'm going to be doing a Deltarune Noelle cosplay soon. Who's excited? Me. I love Deltarune. I am obsessed with it right now. Guess my ship in the comments below. Unrelated, but again, guess my ship. Also, I just scratched myself. Sorry, it looks really creepy. Anyway, the poster child for Whimsy. You cannot tell me that I somehow have to separate the fact that I enjoy whimsical things and am a feminist. You can be both. I specifically started to talk about feminism because I realized there were so few people like me in the feminist movement. There were so few people who are very hyper feminine, very girly, very kind of like stereotypically look traditional, but are not, absolutely not.
Causing this unnecessary stress in your life.
Necessary stress. I mean, imagine how Black people feel. Imagine how trans people feel. If that's how you feel about, oh, I've got some stress in my life, imagine people who are actually from marginalized communities who literally have to worry about being assaulted when they leave the house. Imagine how they feel. Because, you know, this is such a privileged take, and, you know, I can joke about, oh, you know, ha ha ha, it's so funny talking about soda. Seriously, this is really privileged because some people don't have the privilege of not being clued into politics. You ask any person in America who is from a less than rich family, who is Black, who is trans, who is LGBTQ, you ask any person from these groups, someone who, I don't know, might have had family deported because of ICE, any of these people, right? You can understand that not everyone has the privilege of just separating themselves from politics. And if you do have that privilege, good for you, but maybe you should use it to help other people because there are a lot of people who don't have that. And that's honestly really traumatizing for them because they have to live through this reality where they don't know if they're going to be safe when they leave the house. And you're out here talking about making sourdough. Are you serious? Another thing I want to say is that I do think that social media specifically tries to make us exhausted, mentally drained, and tired. I think it is a tactic, and I might be going too much into conspiracy theories here, but I think that social media specifically wants us to be tired because it benefits from that. The algorithm benefits from getting you addicted to watching reel after reel after reel, and by the time you stop watching them, it's been 2 hours and you're scrolling, right? And people like this are trying to kind of equate you being tired of doom scrolling, which is a different thing, to you just shouldn't be political at all. You can be political, but I would advise you try to just read physical sources instead of using social media all the time. And again, I know this might sound hypocritical because I am a creator on social media. That is my job, right? But I would say, you know, you need to get out of social media. You need to look at news articles, and not just one news article, because again, they can be biased, but multiple news articles from different sites and places that you can research, because that is going to give you a much better picture of the world. And you're not going to feel as fatigued by doing that as you would by scrolling an algorithm. And I see her opinion on feminists.
I don't want these radical feminists to be able to vote. If you're shaving your head because someone was elected, you are not mentally stable enough.
Okay, so this is a really interesting point that she starts off with, saying that if you shave your head, you're not mentally stable. A lot of the time, shaving your head is actually a political statement. It's not necessarily always about mental stability. A lot of the time, it is actually about making a statement. It's about showing, hey, this is messed up. If a becomes the president, I mean, I don't know, if I personally was living in America right now and, you know, I saw Trump being reelected at the time, which again, I was so upset when I heard about it on the news, I wouldn't be surprised if people shave their head because Trump is literally a proven, and like he is, like there is literal evidence to show that. So, you know, I think that that is totally justifiable, someone wanting to shave their head as a kind of act of defiance against the system. And because it's just someone being elected is it's kind of really diminishes how serious this actually is, because like I said, Trump is he is like there is literal irrefutable evidence that he is. So I think that that is more than enough justification. And I absolutely think you should be able to vote because, again, you're showing that you're political, that you are clued into what's going on, that you care enough to make a really big change. I think it's a cool statement. I think it's very punk, honestly. It's cool.
So I believe in a one-family voting system.
Get on to one of her worst beliefs. Again, I feel like I say that about a lot of them. She believes in a one-family voting system. So let's hear what she has to say about what that is before I offer my thoughts on it.
Even if I had my voting rights stripped away, I wouldn't care. My husband would be the one voting.
I wouldn't care if I got my voting rights stripped away because my husband would vote for me. That is a really dangerous thing to say. You know what the like one person voting system thing is, which a lot of the Turning Point USA, like right wing, like female influencers, I guess you would call them, are trying to promote. This essentially is a voting system that they want, where it would be a man who is the head of the household, quote unquote, who would vote for the family. Really sad, actually, because again, we've had women who fought so hard to get us the right to vote, which was a really important fight for them to try and get us this right. And now we can vote, and that's an incredible thing. So why would you want to take away women's right to vote? Now, she actually does explain why she wants to take it away, and it is literally as simple as most women vote left-leaning. Most women do not vote for right-wing politicians. Why? Because women are more empathetic. Women are statistically more empathetic, so they're probably more likely to vote for a party who has better policies towards minorities and women, because women are not voting in the way that she wants them to. It's all about control, and it's all about coercion to try and get people on her side of the narrative. It would mean that a lot of the voters for left-wing politicians would not be able to vote, which is a really messed up thing to think because, you know, in all of my time being political, talking about these topics, you would never catch me saying, oh, actually, I believe someone like her shouldn't be able to vote. You know, again, I'm not American, but I don't believe anyone should not have the right to vote. I think everyone should be able to vote. I think that's a basic human right. And even if I disagree with you fundamentally and what you choose to vote for, you still deserve that right because we're all humans, you know, we all exist on this earth. And I think it's really dangerous that she wants to take that away from people. And again, something that she benefits from. But the reason is because she wants to try and show something which would take away half of the competition. So it's all about control and manipulation. And again, it's because she wants to promote this traditional household where, oh, the husband makes the decision. It's just so sad. It really is sad when you look at the history of suffragettes and everything that women have fought for, all the women who put all this effort and time and energy and blood, sweat and tears into getting the right to vote, and this is what you have to say for it, you know? We have her belief on feminists, if you guys are ready for this. Let's see.
Feminism is the biggest lie we have ever been sold as women. It's a movement funded by the wealthiest evil people with the goal to destroy marriage.
So apparently feminism is a lie because it's funded by the wealthiest evil people. Now let's think about some of the wealthiest evil people. Let's look at Elon Musk. Does he fund feminism? No, he does not. Elon Musk does not. I do not see Elon Musk funding feminism. I see quite the opposite. He is friends with Trump, who is a known offender, and also and everything, you know, just awful. He's friends with horrible people. He has very misogynistic beliefs. Elon is definitely not feminist. So no. Donald Trump. Is Donald Trump a feminist? No. He is a offender. So he is not a feminist. Let's think of some other really famous, rich, wealthy people. Let's think of Epstein. Was Epstein a feminist? No, absolutely God not. He was evil. I really would love to know what evil person she's talking about because she's at a Turning Point USA event. So I'm assuming most of the people at that event would be, obviously they're pro-Trump because it's a right-wing event, and they're probably pro-Elon Musk because Elon Musk is like one of Trump's his little minions, I think he was. I don't know if he is anymore, but I know he was like a little Trump minion for a bit. You know, so I don't know who they're talking about. Destroy marriage and family. I don't think I know any feminists who want to destroy marriage and family. if anything, I think it's a wonderful thing. I come from a family where my parents' marriage is a beautiful thing. I have a really loving family. I have a mum and a dad who love me. I have a sister who loves me. I have a really wonderful family, and I think it's amazing. I do not believe we should destroy families. If anything, I think that it's more about having more of a open-minded belief of what a family is, because I think families are more than just a nuclear family of like the man and the woman. That can be two men, that can be two women, that can be two non-binary people, that could be a non-binary person and a man, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, there is more than just like this kind of very nuclear view of families, and I think that's kind of what we're talking about more, is just being able to give everyone a chance of having a family.
Trying to make you hate the very things God made unique about you. So what? Like, I'm assuming she just means my ability to have kids, because they're obsessed with having kids, these people. It's like, what else about me? Maybe I have a really good personality or a brain. Like, I don't know, why is it all about reproductive organs for these people? All we're worth is our organs. It's like, what about our personalities? What about our intellect? What about all the female scientists? What about people like Mary Curie? What about people like Florence Nightingale? What about all the incredible women who've done more than just, I don't know, what their bodies do? Like, it's so weird to me. I'm always about making women's bodies the most important thing about them, and I find that really dehumanizing. I find that very objectifying, and I think that is diminishing all of the incredible women who have done insanely talented things for science, for academia. You're just discrediting that by saying, oh, well, family matters more, or your body matters more. It's like, yeah, you can have both. You can have both. Objectively, you can have a family, you can have kids, and you can also be a feminist, you can also be a scholar, you can also be a teacher. That's kind of what feminism has given us.
To a grocery store, everyone's in their pajamas. No one has any makeup on. No one brushes their hair. If you look at photos from the 50s, women are in dresses and heels just going to the grocery store. Men.
Okay, so, I mean, this is a really interesting point that she makes, because you could use this to argue that America is in an economic crisis and that there is a problem with people not even being able to get minimum wage jobs. People aren't even able to afford certain things. People in the UK have to choose between heating and eating, which is just heartbreaking. There is an economic crisis a lot of countries are in, and I can understand the point that she's trying to make, but at the same time, I would say the 1950s had its own host of problems. Sure, people might have dressed better, but you have to understand that was just because the fashion was different at the time. If you look into vintage fashion, people would own less clothes. The clothes that they did own were better quality. And, I recently have been talking to one of my friends who collects vintage fashion. She owns a lot of pieces from the Victorian times and things like that. And one of the things that she told me is that if you were to manufacture clothes from the 50s, from the 60s even those times, which was not that long ago, nowadays, it would be impossible to manufacture because it would be too expensive to produce, because the quality was so much higher. So it's more so about kind of the way that the fast fashion industry and capitalism has evolved.
The environment was cleaner. Everything looked better.
Yeah, the environment has changed. I'm not disagreeing with her, but there's a lot more factors to it than just, oh my God, people should dress like that. A lot of people can't afford to dress like that, unfortunately.
Well, it's been completely on purpose to make people depressed.
I get that. I do agree with a lot of her points, because as someone who does dress up every day, I do my makeup every day. But again, I do think you shouldn't necessarily have to. Because, I live in Japan. Japan is a very conservative country. If, as a woman, I was to go to work when I used to work a 9 to 5 with a full face of makeup, I would get treated completely differently than if I went with no makeup. It is unfortunately just a symptom of a sexist society, like being treated differently. So I don't necessarily think it's about women giving up. I think it's, again, just the society that we live in. There's a lot more to what she's saying than just, oh, it's because, people gave up. End of the day, the fact that women can choose and we don't have to always do heavy makeup and go out with our hair done is kind of liberating in its own sense. Like, I kind of feel a bit relieved that, no one's going to go crazy if I was to go out in my pajamas. But, I do live in Japan, so I live in a lot more of a conservative country when it comes to clothing compared to America. So I haven't really seen a lot of this personally, so I can't really speak on it to the same extent. So that was my opinions on Savannah Stone, having gone through her social media. It was really interesting to have a look at all of her policies, all of her beliefs, because, you know, as someone who is very feminist, I was kind of shocked how, you know, she says all these things and there's not really any evidence to back them up. Like, you know, a lot of her beliefs is kind of just rooted in, oh, well, I believe this is right. And yet there are so many people supporting her. Like, she's a very successful person. In fact, I believe her TikTok has over 300k followers. So there's a lot of people who do believe this type of thing. Again, I'm not trying to hate on her. I think, you know, I don't think it's a good message to send to young girls or to young boys, because I think ultimately you should be able to have an education, be able to choose your own career, and that will give you a lot more success and stability than relying on someone else. Because at the end of the day, if you do decide to become a tradwife, if you do decide to rely on a man, you could lose everything in one instant. And it's not even about finding the right man, because sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes you just decide, actually, maybe we weren't meant for each other. I think it's something like 50% of marriages in America end in divorce. So you never know what could happen. And it's really sensible to have your own career, and not just from a sensibility perspective, but it's also very fulfilling. I think it's really nice to have your own money, to have your own success, to build up your own business, or to do something that makes you feel truly passionate and make a difference in this world. And, you know, a lot of people say that Albert Einstein was the cleverest person. Personally, I don't know if that's true, because we don't really look at all of the insanely talented women who were able to come up with breakthroughs in scientific discoveries when some of them didn't even manage to go to a proper classroom or to get a proper college education. So I think that we really need to start having these conversations about why this tradwife kind of epidemic that we're going through is harmful. And again, I'm not going to tell you guys that you have to, you know, not become a wife, not get married, that you can't, you know, have a traditional life if you want to do that and that makes you truly happy. But please, for the love of God, please get an education first. If you can afford to, please get a degree first. It is so important. As someone who got my degree when I was obviously very young, it has helped me so much. Having a degree in philosophy has helped me insanely, like so much. Like the amount of things that I talk about and I can reference philosophical beliefs or scholars, it is so helpful. So you really need to have a degree, not just to be able to get a job, but also to educate yourself and have this kind of self-awareness. I don't know. I think that a lot of what she says is harmful, and a lot of what she says she kind of peppers in with a couple videos which are kind of normal. Like, I was looking at her account and some of her videos are just pretty reasonable takes, just talking about like annoying friends or whatever, and I'm like, oh well, that's a good take. You know, not all of them are insanely right-wing, and that is what she's doing to try and pull in more followers who might be young girls who agree with some of her takes and think, actually, well, that doesn't sound too bad to have a man do everything for me. But I would argue, first of all, you won't be fulfilled, and second of all, that is not stable, and you cannot rely on anyone but yourself. At the end of the day, you need to be making your own money, getting your own cash, and being successful. Because if I'm going to spend a lot of money, I don't want to have to ask someone. I want to buy my own stuff, enjoy myself, and do what I want with my life. So that is my take on her videos. When we do talk about consent, it's super important to say that consent is essential for all relationships, and that it is not just something that doesn't exist just because you're married. Consent is essential, and that is so important for young girls and young boys to know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So I forgot to film the rest of this outro, but I forgot what else I need to say. I'm so tired. Please subscribe. We are almost at 40k. I usually make feminist content like this, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next video. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I hope you like this picture of this creepy hedgehog.